Welcome to Noise 11, Tim.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul. I appreciate it.
We've got quite the catalogue of songs and albums and bands and whatever to talk about this afternoon. But let's start off with
Yeah,
Palace of the King, because, there is
yep,
new Palace of the King music out there, which is nice to see. Friends in
yep.
Low Places.
We've been working on a bunch of new songs here at the studio,
Oh, look at this.
and we've actually been in here today working on some new stuff. But we're putting a song out around about every 8 weeks. We're going to put a song out, and then the album will drop in December.
Because this is taking quite some time to get to a fourth studio album for Palace of the King, isn't it? 2018, Get Right With Your Maker. It's been quite some time, but there's been the occasional single along the way.
Yeah, that's right. We had obviously we had the hiccup with the whole thing that went on in the world, and we kept recording, but it was hard to get everyone together. So what's ended up happening is I've actually had so much time as it's evolved with the boys that I've got a backlog of stuff. We always record lots. We just didn't a lot of stuff over that time because we felt like it was kind of a bit weird to release music and not play live, because that's ultimately what we're about. And then as it turned out, we've got Shawnee, who plays keys in Palace, is now playing keys in James Rain's band. And Cam, who plays drums in Palace, now plays drums in the Screaming Jets. And I play guitar and sing, and I'm now playing guitar for Jon Stevens. So we're all so busy. It's all these gigs occurred after the pandemic, and we were all like, we really need to take this work. And we're having a great time playing with those guys. So I just said to them, well, how about we just start putting singles out? And when we can get some time around all the big boys, we'll go out and we'll do some gigs. So that's the plan.
So where does this project for album number 4 start? Was Dead End Blues the beginning of this, or do we go even back further to I'm Sorry Blues?
Yeah, it keeps going back even further than that. There were a couple of songs that we released last year, maybe even the year before. One of These Days is another song that's on Spotify. That'll be on the album. So we're just, we're kind of, we've just been sort of putting one out here, one out there, one out here, thinking, what are we going to do? And then I spoke to our record company, Reckless Records, and said, how about we just do one every 8 weeks and then get the album out in December? So that's, now we've got a timeline rather than me just randomly going, let's put a single out now, and then nothing for a few months,
Interesting way to release an album too, isn't it? Because we're actually watching it grow along the way.
Isn't it funny? Well, and it's also deal with so many different artists doing what you do, and so many different sort of points of view. It occurred to me that when you put an album out, you have maybe a few weeks of activity around the album, and then everyone moves on. And I just thought, well, why don't we just have that activity around one song and then do it again when everyone's forgotten about it, and then do it again, and then do it again. So that's sort of where the theory comes. We just sort of try and keep in people's faces. And then when we drop the album in December, everyone will have heard all the songs except that one that they'll get with the album, and then they can go and listen to the whole album if they want to, and hopefully they will.
It would make it interesting for a gig as well. Do you sort of add that new song into the set list as it's released?
Yeah, well, we would, but we haven't been doing any gigs because everyone's so busy. So ultimately, I think what we're going to have to do is rehearse, play all of the new songs, get a feel for what's working the best, then look back at the other 3 albums and obviously the 2 EPs before that, structure a set. I mean, we're going to have to eventually, we might have to do like the Living End did at the corner and do an album per gig or something. If only we sold that many records and there was a demand for that, that'd be nice.
You have been very busy. There's not only been, Jon Stevens, the Chantoozies, getting in the studio. Was that a one-off, or are you doing more work with the Chantoozies?
I think I did. We recorded a cover a few years ago or a couple of years ago, but it's an ongoing thing. I'm good friends with the girls, and they're great. And Evie is such a great songwriter. She's very creative. So she likes to come in the studio and we just throw things around. And then, every night was one of those things that the last single was one of those things that we just were really happy with it and they wanted to put it out. So, yeah, it's just, I've got this great space here at the studio. So I do lots of different stuff with different artists, James Rain and Ella Hooper and Angry Anderson and obviously the Chantoozies and Palace of the King and all sorts of different artists. So I just love coming in here and being creative, and it doesn't really, as long as the people are nice and the music's good, I'm into it.
Yeah, joining Suzi Quatro's band, I would imagine, would be a lot of fun.
So much fun, Paul. It's like right up my alley, that one. I couldn't believe it when they asked me. I was like, "Yep, I'm in." And I didn't know the dates, and I didn't know the money. I just said, I got the halfway through the sentence from them. Are you interested in playing with Suzi Quatro? Yes, count me in. That was it. I love playing with Suzi. She's so good.
Yeah. Because, this all really started out for you with the androids, and even that raises its head from time to time still.
Yeah. Well, you and I have been, doing these kinds of interviews since all the way back then. And now we do android stuff sometimes with Brian Mannix, and that's a lot of fun, which is funny because it's an idea I've had for almost since we put the band together. I was hoping that I might be able to convince Sony to let us do a record with Brian, but these days we don't do a lot of stuff with the androids, but whenever we can, I love doing it. So, and to make a record with Brian has been such a great thing. And we did that here as well over the pandemic. And Brian's, I think he's a bit of a dark horse. People don't realise how good he is. He comes in the studio here. I'm like, this guy's fantastic. He's really good husky voice.
Yeah.
I love recording him.
Well, the songs are very compatible, the Uncanny X-Man.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's that pop rock thing, a little bit gimmicky, silly sometimes, and obviously they were in the 80s and we were like the early 2000s, but I think it's a really good match. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the era of the Superjesus? Where's that fitting in with this time?
Well, late 90s to early 2000s. So just before the androids was the Superjesus. I think Gravity might have been that Jet Age album, and Gravity I think was a hit in maybe 2000. Before that, I was in Plasticine, which became the androids. It was around about the time that you would remember this, where the internet started becoming accessible to more and more people, the late 90s era. And then we suddenly realised there were all these other bands called Plasticine. And we never knew that before because there was no internet. So we suddenly realised we couldn't use that name anymore, and we'd figure out what to do. And then we called the band the Androids and put that record out after I left the Superjesus.
Yeah, that was also around the time you worked out you couldn't call the band Led Zeppelin as well, wasn't it?
Exactly. Oh, you're kidding. There's already someone with that name. Damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah. So then Rogue Traders then came later then, did it?
2005. So after with Madonna was a massive hit for the Androids, and I remember speaking to you around about that time. And as is the usual way with these things, you have one massive hit single, it's really hard to compete with that or make more music that's going to be as successful as that. So the album didn't do as well as the single. So I was sort of struggling trying to keep this thing moving along. And then I was asked if I wanted to join Rogue Traders, who were friends of mine. And that evolved into, what it evolved into, which became huge. So it's kind of kept falling into these things,
It's incredible when I see a list of your credits and the number that you've worked with, whether it be James Rain, Mark Seymour, the man you're wearing at the moment, Ross Wilson.
Yeah, Ross, yep.
Rene Gay, you worked with the great Rene Gay at one point as well. What was that like?
It was one of those things, I don't know if you've heard of these things, they're called the super band gigs. I don't put myself in Superman category, but it was a super band. So it was a function that had been put together, and Rene was one of the featured artists, and I was asked to play guitar. And with that again, similar, not musically similar to Suzi Quatro, but right up my alley. I just went, oh, fantastic! I'm going to get to play with this unbelievable soul R&B singer who I've always been a fan of, and it had John Watson on the drums, who's, you know, a legend in the Australian music industry. And I remember being at the rehearsal, and you know, there was kind of like there were a bit of nerves because Renee had a bit of a reputation as being a bit of a hard ass, and I had a few sort of notes written down. And I remember Watto just looked at me and said, mate, the notes, get rid of the notes, you know. And he was helping me out. So I got rid of the notes. And she came in and she felt she was appreciated the fact that I was right into that music. I had my Strat, I had my old Marshall, and I was just loving playing these cool bluesy soul songs with her. It was an amazing experience. And she just sang like a bird. So good. I was such a big fan of hers.
There must be literally over 100,000 people in Australia who have seen you but don't realise they've seen you because you've been on tours with Kiss, Alice Cooper, Tony Clarkson, John Fogerty, Pink. So you have literally performed to hundreds of thousands of people around the country, haven't you?
Yeah, it's funny. I every now and then I think of that, and I think, gee, if only there was a way of me letting them all know, hey, I've got a new record. If you enjoyed that gig where you saw me, whenever that was, you know, but there's no way. It's always. I'm sure you've thought about this before. It's one of those things where you unless you're the singer, and even sometimes the singer, who a singer can go out as a solo artist. Not the band, don't know who they are. And then I'm one step removed from that in a lot of these instances. So it's like, okay, I'm not the singer, I'm not Jon Stevens, right? But then I'm in his band. But then if I'm not in his band, I'm doing something else. It's like they don't know who I am sometimes, you know. But it's I just love. Since I was a kid, I wanted to play guitar with, you know, actually. Some of these artists that I get to play with. I mean, I had James Rain's first solo album on vinyl, and I used to play it in the lounge room and say to my mum, I'm going to play in this guy's band. And not long after that, I was still a kid living with mum and dad. I got the gig playing with James. So I've been lucky and, very fortunate to play with these people. And I think that really, playing with James when I was in my late teens really gave me the start where it was almost like people like Renee must be all right if he plays with James. I think that, and so that just sort of it's worked throughout my whole, you know, a lot of these people, they need a reference. If I hadn't done anything, perhaps Jon Stevens might say, oh, I don't know who this guy is. He could be terrible. I'm a bit worried. Whereas he knew who I'd played with and he said, oh, yeah, and we knew each other vaguely. John had been on the Pink tour when we were touring with her with the Androids. So he'd seen me fronting my own band as well. And I talk about a great gig, man, playing with him. I just stand on stage and it's just like, that guy is quite possibly the best singer on the planet right now. And not his age is not working against him at all. He sings like a demon, depends what you're into. He just sings unbelievably. He's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see you on the One Electric Day shows later in the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice House and Belinda Carlisle.
I know. Isn't that an interesting lineup?
Yeah.
Have you seen Belinda before?
No, I haven't seen Belinda before, so this will be a first.
Me either. Yeah. And hopefully, I hear on the rumour mill that Suzi might be coming back over summer. So fingers crossed that happens because I love playing with the boss. She's excellent.
Yes, that could be a lot of fun as well. You pop up in the most unusual places. I remember, I think the first time I ever saw you in musical theatre going to see, I think it was Rock of Ages, and I'm sitting there in the audience and you see the band in the back and I'm thinking, fuck, that guy looks like Tim Henwood.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great gig. Because it became this springboard into all these other shows that never occurred to me to do music theatre. I'd never even thought of it. But Mum and Dad had made me do classical guitar lessons when I first started learning, when I was like 6 years old, 7 years old. So I'd learned to read, and then the Rock of Ages comes about, and they contacted me and said, "Oh, you'd be perfect for this show. Are you interested?" Yeah, I'm interested. It's eight gigs a week for a year potentially. I loved that. That was such a great gig. Exhausting though. There were like some nights I'm standing at the back of the stage in the heat in that little comedy theatre, the comedy theatre. But it was such a great fun, great thing to do, great experience, and a new thing. As we all progress through life, sometimes you need a new challenge, something new to inspire you, and that just really inspired me. And then I started getting asked to do other shows, like the Cat Stevens one, and then the real sort of commercial ones like Grease and the Mamma Mia show, and like all these shows. I don't know how many I've done. It's just like 10 shows or maybe more, but it's such a great experience.
Kinky Boots, Carol Beautiful.
There you go.
You've been everywhere, man.
Yeah, it's a great thing, sitting in the pit. And I remember my mum and dad coming to see me doing a show in the pit, and I said, well, as parents, you'd like to think that you can help your child learn a skill that they're going to be able to use throughout their life. All those guitar lessons that they put me through and paid for when money wasn't coming easy for them, I had my lesson every week. And I said, look at what you supplied me with a skill, and now I'm able to live my life and look after my family with that skill that you helped me achieve. It's amazing. Yeah. I love the theatre stuff though.
Well, the Cat Stevens thing was quite special, wasn't it? Because Moonshadow didn't tour Australia. It was only ever in Melbourne, and then it didn't tour the world. So those shows that you were on with Cat Stevens were the one and only time that show has ever been performed anywhere in the world.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And the fact that he was there, and like I'd be playing one of his songs, and when we were rehearsing, he'd lean over and say, actually, do it like this, and he'd grab the guitar and play it for me. I can't believe this. This is just weird, this guy. And he was so down to earth and lovely. Yeah. And I thought the show. Did you see the show from out the front, Paul?
Well, I saw the show. Can you remember it? Night. I do remember the show.
Oh, you saw it? Yeah. Okay, well, because I never got to see it out the front. I was only in the pit. So to me, it all made total sense. It flowed nicely and everything. But I had been told out the front that it was a bit hard to sort of figure out what's going on in some parts of it. And then my understanding was that there were some people there who were trying to get him to change some things. But classic, 70s rock star, he's just gone, nah, I'm not changing it. You're wrong. And he's held his line. That's kind of why it went back into, hiatus. He might bring it out again one day. It's funny, when you think about someone like that who's that successful, a lot of times they are that successful because they didn't listen to other people. Yeah. So I totally respected him for what he did.
And today I've learned a new expression. I've never heard the expression, out, what do you call it, out the front? Yeah.
Yeah.
Never heard that expression. Well, us plebs in the audience, we refer to backstage, but we didn't know that there was a reverse backstage.
That's so funny. Yeah. No, out the front. Have you seen it from out the front? No, I haven't. Never got a chance
out the front? What, on the fucking street? What's he talking about?
Yeah, no. In the house.
Yes, in the house. Well, Palace of the King, that's what we need to go and listen to at the moment in anticipation of later in the year and hopefully a few shows, if Jon Stevens allows it.
Yeah, and the Screaming Jets and James Rain. It's like, oh, God. Everyone, I remember we were on tour with the Screaming Jets, Palace of the King, and Cam, our drummer, who's mind-blowing. Cam's also in the Road Traders with me. This is unbelievable musician, really strong presence and very charismatic and energetic. And every night the Screaming Jets guys would go, man, Cam, you're unreal. And I was thinking, here we go. And next thing, at the end of the tour, they asked him to join. Same when we went to Europe with Palace of the King went to Europe with Airborne. We're supporting Airborne, And at the end of the tour, they asked Harry, our guitarist, to join in, you know. And I'm like, you've tried to put together a great band, and then everyone wants to steal bits and pieces of it, you know, but that's okay.
Yep. As they say, in the biz, that's showbiz.
That's right. That's the one, mate.
Yep. All right. Good to catch up with you there, Tim.
Yeah, you too, Paul. Thanks for the chat. I really appreciate the support.